Welcome back to another episode of Erin Plays. This time I'm going to be looking at Color Dreams games, and there are a ton of them. The same company also developed those infamous religious games under the name Wisdom Tree, such as Bible games and Bible Buffet, but the Color Dreams games were all the non-religious ones. These games always stuck out in the NES library because of the color of the cartridges. If you ever looked at a physical NES collection, they stick out like a sore thumb, because they either came in baby blue or black, while most NES games were obviously gray. This will be an overview of all of the normal Color Dreams games. So let's jump into this because there is a lot. Now before I start, I do want to clarify something. On some of these titles, you will see the name Bunch Games instead of Color Dreams. Apparently they knew they had a bad reputation, so they created the label Bunch Games to continue releasing less than stellar games while not further tarnishing the Color Dreams brand. Let's kick things off with one of my most hated games on the NES, and that is Menace Beach, also known as Sunday Funday if you're playing the Wisdom Tree version. The funny thing is, this game is a lot more visually appealing than the majority of Color Dreams games. The colors are vibrant with pops of neon, and of course you start out on the beach because it's 1990 and everything was very beach. I mean, on the NES alone, there were a bunch of beach-themed games like Venice Beach, TNC Surf Design, Kings of the Beach, and California games, just to name a few. I even like the name of the game, Menace Beach. Being a play on Venice Beach, it's cute. However, besides the vibe being appealing overall, it has many problems. So your goal is to save your girlfriend, and I can't help but notice that visually, she looks like she's in her 20s while you play as a totally tubular, freckled-faced kid that can't be over 12 years old. So that's weird. And to make things even weirder is the situation not fitting her attitude at all. She's tied up and clearly in distress. You can even see it on her face. But her speech bubble would indicate the opposite. You seem to be inconveniencing her, and she is super annoyed with you. Like, really, let's dissect this for a moment. Sorry babe, it looks like our little date at the malt shop is postponed. Is it just me, or is she being condescending about their date? Like, she thinks going to the malt shop is a dumb idea and she wants to belittle you about it. The kid is not even old enough to work in most states. Like, what do you want him to do? Where do you want him to take you? After making a joke about being tied up, she threatens that you'll be on her bad side if you don't help her out. Why is she talking like she is the villain? She's chained to a wall, so shouldn't she be scared or at least not be a bitch while asking for help? Imagine if in Super Mario 3, the letters Princess Peach sent to Mario were all condescending and bitchy. And as you go through the game, her clothes slowly get ripped off, which I guess is supposed to be hot or something, but it doesn't make much sense to me. Like, what the hell were they trying to do here? But more importantly, the gameplay annoys the living hell out of me. I get that you're on a skateboard, but it is so insanely slippery that I find myself just sliding around everywhere, crashing into things, and having trouble getting where I need to go. It's beyond frustrating. The first enemies you fight are a ninja, a fire hydrant with legs, and a clown. I will say I appreciate the randomness, and you definitely could encounter a ninja and a clown on the Venice Beach boardwalk in real life. So at least they got that right. As you make your way through the game, you see your girlfriend again and she continues to berate you. Rescue me, you little twit. That's pretty funny. I also noticed it now says meanwhile at Demon Dan's. Who is Demon Dan? Anyway, the second part of this game is what really makes me upset. There's these little spinning things on the wall that flip you around, along with light switches that are constantly making things go dark since you or an enemy can hit it. In this case, the main enemy is an Elvis impersonator, which again, makes sense for Venice Beach. That's about the only thing that makes sense in this game. And that is where I almost always turn it off because it drives me absolutely insane. Sorry, I can only take so much. Color Dreams pulled out the big guns, literally, with this one, Baby Boomer on NES. It's one of the only unlicensed light gun games for the NES, along with the infamous Chiller. And just like with Chiller, I used a regular NES controller instead of a light gun for this, and it worked just fine. First, I have to point out the box art. Yes, it's obviously terrible, but they make it look weirdly creepy. Like it's gonna be a horror game or something. Anyway, you have to help a baby who has escaped the safety of his home explore the outside world, which is apparently full of creatures trying to kill you. And just like the box suggests, there are a ton of creepy crawlers to watch out for. Rats, spiders, and those squiggly snakes that totally remind me of Mr. Burns from that one Simpsons episode. You also have to watch out for sticks of dynamite. Who left them there? Someone must have been placing them in front of the baby on purpose because they are all lit. You have to hit gold nuggets and cartons of milk to give him energy. But up top, instead of saying gold like a normal game would, it just says nuggets. So at first glance, you'd think this baby is powered by milk and chicken nuggets. Which, I mean, would be pretty spot on for the average American child nowadays, I guess. There's also what appear to be clouds of urine that you shoot repeatedly until they make a bridge made out of frozen urine that your baby can safely cross. Seriously, could they have chosen a worse shade of yellow? I guess it's so it draws your attention to the cloud, but I don't know, it just grosses me out. All in all, this game is playable, and I actually kinda had fun with it because of its jankiness. It's so dumb that it's entertaining. Now we have to talk about Castle of Deceit. I will admit this is a pretty badass name for a game, or a metal album. I've stumbled into playing this game a few times in my life, and each time I just got weirded out more and more. You play as a little wizard in your Party City costume shooting stars at enemies. I guess being a wizard ties in with the whole castle theme. And speaking of wizards, isn't that Gandalf's hat? Anyway, you run around collecting keys in an underground area full of water and vines. At least that's what I've gathered from the amount of time I've been able to stick with this game. You get the keys so you can open doors later. Fun fact, if you press select, it brings you to a screen that tells you the title of the game in case you forgot and couldn't be bothered to look at your cartridge sitting in your NES. Or maybe this thing predicted the future being full of emulators and things like the EverDrive, and I should give them more credit. The enemies are nearly impossible to hit the way they constantly fling around all willy-nilly. And sometimes you get a key, but it's not for the right door. So you're gonna find yourself running around back and forth trying to open the right door and getting the right key while dodging super annoying enemies. And some of the enemies are pretty hard to see, like this blue dragon hiding in the water that's trying to kill you. Oh, and the purple cigarettes up top? That's your health bar. And when you die, you turn into a vagina. I like how all of a sudden here I'm fighting a giant fly in a totally different perspective, and that was actually kind of fun. All in all, you get keys, open doors when they let you, and go to different places. It's not worth it. In the adventures of Captain Comic, you're a spaceman who lands on planet Tambi, but it honestly just seems like Earth. You relentlessly kill every living creature in sight, which bothers me because they don't even seem like bad guys. Bright green worms, toucans, parrots, and these really sad-looking frogs. I love them. When you first start playing, you don't have any ammo, so you can't shoot, which really sucks because all you can do is jump to avoid enemies. You can't even jump on them or duck, so yeah, it's bad. The music is the most generic bit of nothingness you could possibly put into a game. They did not care. They just needed music. I don't know what would have been worse. This or that depressing rendition of The Saints Go Marching In from Bible Buffet. This game was originally made for MS-DOS, which makes a lot of sense, and apparently it was one of the first side-scrolling games for the PC. Who would have known that Captain Comic was actually a part of gaming history? It also received a sequel, but that was only for DOS. Challenge of the Dragon had me a bit confused at first because there is another NES game with the same name, but that one was developed by Sachin, and it's more of a Double Dragon type clone. But in this Color Dreams Challenge of the Dragon, it's a side-scroller where you continuously walk right while fighting guys. The intro is pretty funny. You're making out with your girlfriend for kind of a long time for a Nintendo game, until an angry incel wizard comes along and traps her in a bubble. You play as a pretty cool looking dude, sporting a leather jacket, sunglasses, and jeans. You usually don't think about that kind of modern-ish getup when you're dealing in a world with wizards, but I'll take it. Your sword is pretty lame, and it reminds me of the sword in Wizards and Warriors. Oh, and the hearts up top are totally from Zelda 1. I appreciate the attention to detail, at least in the first stage with different storefronts, although most of them look like bars. I wonder what the inside of Suzette's looks like. And speaking of the first stage, the first boss seems to be the wizard from the intro of the game. You know, the dude who you assume to be the main bad guy, like the final boss. But no, he's already back. Different stages actually have different enemies, which I know isn't asking for much, but it is when you're dealing with games from Color Dreams. Even the color schemes get switched up, which I appreciate. This one features a lot of bright pinks and greens, which I wasn't expecting for a game like this. You can knock enemies into pits to make the fighting quicker since your attacks suck and it takes a while to kill enemies. The enemies that fly around are a total bitch to kill because you gotta chase them around, which is super annoying since besides having a weak attack, you're also a bit slippery. So good luck getting in a hit before they fly away after finally finding your footing. This is by no means a great game, but for Color Dreams it's actually kinda decent and I don't hate it. Now let's talk about Crystal Mines. Right after you press start, the game hits you with some text so you have some backstory. So you're controlling a cute little robot whose sole purpose is to mine for crystals. You have to obtain a certain amount of crystals in time in order to advance to another level. You basically just shoot through everything and sometimes encounter these mole-like men who are enemies. They also kind of remind me of the Mudmen from Castlevania 4. This is a puzzle game of sorts, and it's more playable than most of what Color Dreams had to offer. You move through mazes and have to get boulders out of your way to progress. And that's about it. Next up, we have King Neptune's Adventure. I remember stumbling upon this game at a game store years ago and really hoping it was one of those games that's like so bad it's good, but that was not the case. You play as King Neptune and your goal is to find your lost treasures located throughout the sea. The first thing that stood out to me in this game was the unsettling music. Yeah, it's eerie, which I suppose is alright, but it's just a little too eerie. Like, the whole time I feel like I'm waiting for something to jump out at me and kill me in a violent, gory death. Anyway, you float around shooting lightning bolts and bombs that you can detonate after you throw them. Since you're underwater, literally everything is floating and it can be hard to aim the bombs and detonate them at the right time. One of the more annoying enemies are the little starfish that fling around like crazy and are hard to kill. You also have to watch out for various fish, including ones that have crowns. Maybe they are rival kings of the sea. I found a sword at one point, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to pick it up. This is where I initially stopped because I couldn't take any more of the music or the nauseating color palette. Master Chu and the Drunkard Hu is a game that has always baffled me by its existence. According to the manual, you play as Master Chu and your friend has turned to drinking to cope with his village being cursed. I find this an odd plot for a children's game, but I don't know. The 80s were weird, right? Before I start complaining, I will say I like these little caterpillar guys you see right at the beginning. They bounce in time to the awful music, which is kinda cute. Okay, it's time to complain. You just jump around shooting enemies that are mostly bugs and snakes, while collecting yin and yang symbols. There is nothing to it. Sometimes you even get to walk on air, which is pretty neat, I guess. And when you hit the end of a section, you freeze in thin air until a door appears and it sucks you in. There's a tree stump in the second level that's like a shitty precursor to the tree stump enemy in Felix the Cat. What if the makers of that game, which is pretty good, were inspired by this? I doubt it, but it's funny to think about. There's just not much to say because it's a bad game and they clearly didn't care making it. It's not even funny bad. It's just the kind of game that bums you out because it's so bad. It's a game that might as well not even exist because it has the bare minimum requirements to count as a game. Next up, we have Metal Fighter. First, I need to talk about the cover. They boldly claim that it delivers superb action and incredible graphics. The box art also shows you under the ocean fighting robotic squids, which seems pretty cool, except I don't remember being underwater at all in the parts that I played. Like most shooters, you're in space, which fits the theme of robots and whatnot. I mean, the title screen even has some little stars and planets in the background, so I'm not sure where the underwater box art came from. Maybe that's later? I don't know. You play as a mech named MCS-920, and you're trying to defend your planet from alien invaders. I will say that the enemies do look a bit aquatic, as some look like jellyfish while others look like space jellyfish. But I can't help but notice what are clearly mountains in the background. So yeah, again, I'd assume we are not underwater. You start off only being able to jump and walk until you get the items that allow you to fly around, which is kind of unique for a shmup. Usually you start off already in the air, so I'll give it originality points for that. When you touch a power-up, instead of it just giving you the ability, it sends you off to a minigame for some reason first. I found that kind of annoying. It's one of the more playable Color Dreams games, but I wouldn't say that makes it good. Operation Secret Storm. Where do I start with this one? You play as a secret agent who's fighting in Desert Storm. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up type game that at times reminds me of Bible games with its look and feel. It starts off with just hand-to-hand combat, but eventually you do get a gun. But it doesn't make things much better. Your first boss is a giant bird that comes out of nowhere, which made me laugh. Yes, remember when the troops had to fight crazed giant birds? But after that, they put you in an oil field, which I guess makes more sense. What's really annoying about this is that it's so easy to get overwhelmed by enemies. And of course each one has their own gun, so there's just constantly crap on the screen. This makes it almost impossible to get a hit in because you're too busy dodging all the bullets and enemies. I will say this game has two positives. One being the fact that it has an overworld map, which really surprised me. And two, being this camel boss that shoots fireballs out of its mouth. Speaking of camels, that reminds me, there's this game on the Commodore 64 called Attack of the Mutant Camels, and the cover is literally a camel shooting a fireball out of its mouth. Maybe Color Dreams was inspired. And Attack of the Mutant Camels was totally inspired by the Atari 2600 Empire Strikes Back game. The AT-ATs already look like camels in that game. Anyway, enough with the fire-breathing camels. The game is almost unplayable, and I can't imagine how tedious it must be to sit through and finish the whole thing. But I'm sure many have done it. Up next, we have the Pratakus Conflict. From the moment I started this game and saw the first screen, I had a feeling this would definitely not be for me. It starts you out in the menu of things you can purchase despite starting you out with no money. I hate when games do that. You can choose a planet to warp to, and then you go on a mission from there. I am so bad with these kinds of games. And then when the gameplay starts, it's basically like Asteroids. And that's about all I have to say. There's just nothing much to really say about this game besides it exists. Growing up in Southern California, one of my earliest childhood fears was the statue of this giant, creepy looking dude hanging over the freeway. The mascot for the Western Exterminator company named Mr. Little. I didn't know his name until looking it up right now for this video, and somehow his name being Mr. Little makes it so much worse. Anyway, in 1990, he eventually got his own video game called Pesterminator, the Western Exterminator. I don't understand why this exists, but it does. Did the Western Exterminator company think this would be good marketing? Would a kid want to play this and then the parent sees it and thinks about giving their company a call the next time they have a spider infestation? Or was it like a free game for the kids to make them look generous? It's just so weird. In the game though, his name is Colonel Cleanup, and you go into people's filthy houses killing all of the mice, rats, and insects you can. He seems to take great joy in smashing these small creatures with his mallet. The whole vibe of this mascot and game is weird and I hate it. The controls are not the best, but the game is playable. Sort of. If you're a masochist that likes to punish themselves, then this could be the game for you. The 80s and 90s were all about telling kids how bad drugs were, while at the same time introducing them to us.
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs.
If you went to public school in America, you too probably also assumed that when you got older, life would be a never-ending trail of trying to dodge drugs in your daily life thanks to the DARE program.
When someone offers you drugs, only one of two people can control the situation. The one with the drugs, or you.
For information, call Dare America.
They did have a sick logo though. So with all that being said, I guess I shouldn't be as surprised as I was when I saw the title screen for the infamous 1989 NES game Raid 2020. It's nothing but some bottles of pills and a gun. This doesn't look enticing at all. It's just kind of bleak. You play as this guy, Shadow, and you have to rid the pier of drug dealers. As if Shadow over here doesn't look extremely questionable himself. Anyway, not that this is at all surprising, but the gameplay kinda sucks. The way you move up and down on a plane is so poorly done. It almost feels like you're on a track sliding up and down. You collect narcotic packages while dodging birds who are trying to shit on you. I guess the pooping birds are a realistic beachside experience, but it's constant. Maybe some of the drug dealers were no good teens who fed them laxatives to get back at the feds. And side note, the birds look like they have sunglasses on. They're cool birds. There's also some really weird platforming sections. You can accidentally go to where I assume is under the pier, and then it sends you all the way back to the beginning of the level, which is super aggravating. There's also an area where you can go to shop and buy a jetpack. I guess they thought there'd be plenty of jetpacks for purchase in 2020. At least they were optimistic back then. Next up, we have Robo Demons, and first of all, I gotta say the name Robo Demons is amazing. I love robots and demons in my video games, so putting them together sounds pretty rad and gives me high expectations, which of course will not be met. There is a lot going on here with the title screen, which is great. Skeletons walking around with swords, a flying skeleton demon, or should I say a Robo Demon flying around, and a little bat too. Demon Cole's challenge awaits you. They present you with a block of text, but they don't give you any time to read it. So I looked at the manual, and basically the Demon King, Kull, also known as the Pain Master here in this illustration, has trapped the souls of demons in machines, thus creating Robo Demons. I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty great plot. It definitely deserved its time to shine on screen. Anyway, it starts off as a shmup, and then you end up walking around underground in a cemetery. There's lots of coffins and things under the ground, but it kind of looks like you're underground too? I don't get the perspective. Level 2 is called the Level of Bone. I'll let you make your own jokes with that one. You shoot a boomerang, and if you touch the pools of blood on the ground, you die. Demon blood will kill you instantly, I suppose. I like the scream he does. It's probably one of my favorite death screams in an NES game. Just listen to it. I also like the happy face power-up. Very creative. We know it's a good thing because it's smiling at us. I tried looking it up in the game's manual, but there is no mention of a happy face. The manual does talk about freeing condemned souls, so maybe that's a freed soul. Sick. There's floating teeth that a normal person would assume to be platforms because they're, like, flat. It's like they are begging you to jump on them and use them as platforms. But nope, it kills you if you jump on top even while avoiding the teeth. It sucks. I was eventually able to get through by running past the first set of fangs so that both of the other two fangs appear on screen at the same time. That's how you pass them. All to get to a bone beast and die. For now, that completes my journey with Robo Demons, but knowing me, I'll probably revisit it at some point. Now it's time to talk about Secret Scout in the Temple of Demise. I think they definitely wanted this to sound like an Indiana Jones movie. Apparently, this was first supposed to be a game for the $6 Million Man, but it ended up being too much money to license, so we got the Secret Scout instead. Now, I don't know anything about the $6 Million Man, besides the action figure that's been referenced in pop culture throughout the years, so I don't know if this is giving $6 Million Man vibes or not. You can tell me in the comments. I do like the title screen with the little guy walking around. You would think that you were the guy flying around with the gun, but no, you're the little dude walking around in a baseball hat. He kind of looks like he's a UPS delivery guy. They should have licensed this game to UPS instead. They even took some inspiration from Zelda 1 with the vines here. Once the game starts, the first thing you see is the ugliest color combination you could imagine. Just a mess of browns and greens. I know it's supposed to be leaves and branches, but it just looks so unappealing. Right away you have to dodge gigantic daggers that are flying at you. They are bigger than your head, so maybe we're fighting a giant? Eventually, you kill a butcher-looking guy after kicking him to death, and then he presents you with a burrito. It looks like a tightly packed Chipotle burrito. Then, guys start shooting at you from windows, which you can mostly just run past, but you can't forget to kill the guy on the stairs before you can progress. And by the way, the walking feels really slippery. And I know not to expect much when it comes to a soundtrack from Color Dreams, but wow is this music repetitive and irritating. After playing enough of these, a trope in Color Dreams games seems to be kicking enemies into pits instead of actually fighting them because it takes too damn long. Also, they like to make sprites of dudes in blue jeans and leather jackets. Maybe they just really liked that look. It seriously takes forever to kill enemies. Just kick and kick and kick. I hate it so much. It quickly starts to get confusing when it comes to figuring out where you need to go, which I hate. The screens just keep going, the music keeps going, it just never ends. I accidentally went backwards here, so I have no idea. I don't know. I'm done. And now it's time to talk about Silent Assault, which was developed by Joyvan Incorporated. I've never heard of Joyvan, so I looked them up, and apparently they only lasted for a little over a year before merging with Satchin. Color Dreams, however, was the company to release Silent Assault in North America, while Satchin released it in other countries. This will be the case with other games on the list as well. Anyway, the first thing that jumps out about this game are the colors. Everything is so bright. Magentas, purples, and bright greens were not what I expected for an army-themed game, but I'll take it. This is a run-and-gun game with some similarities to Contra, like the jumping where you kind of somersault in the air. The enemies in the sky look like flying alien crab thingies, and some of the bombs totally resemble nipples. If you hit one of the mines on the floor, those will kill you instantly, but the other enemies seem to be more forgiving. When you kill the soldier enemies, they turn into bats. I think it's fun in games where instead of just disappearing from the screen, enemies turn into things when you hit them. I don't really know what to say about this, but I had to point it out. There appears to be a nurse's head on a pole here, and I'm not sure how to interact with it. Feel free to leave me a comment if you can solve this mystery. Most of the bosses seem to be machines. Yeah, this is totally inspired by Contra, but there's also some super weird stuff in this game. It's like Contra on acid. And that being said, it's totally not that bad for a Color Dreams game. As I continued playing it, I realized that I was kind of enjoying it, which was a pleasant surprise. You can also power up and get different guns, but you sadly cannot shoot diagonally. You do eventually get spread though, so that's cool. Sometimes you get invincibility, but look at the colors. It's just so random and neon. I'm not sure if it's good or tasteful, but I like the change of pace. The sound it makes when you hit the hitbox sounds so dinky. I love it. It's the definition of pew pew! So eventually you're in the desert, where there's a temple and crazy dinosaur creatures. When you get invincibility here, just run for it. It will make your life a lot easier. And I have to point this out too. I love this boss. It's a giant skull with little skulls bouncing out of its mouth. And the music also doesn't fit. I'm just now realizing. I think I love this. Here, you see some jetpack guys flying around that look straight out of Ninja Gaiden or TMNT. I kind of feel like I'm in the Technodrome now. I love this part. You fight a giant supercomputer, which totally rules. He's so angry. Look at him, he looks like he's going chomp 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 chomp. But things really take a turn here when all of a sudden you're at a carnival? Look at the clowns. This was not what I was expecting at all. There's even rides and a blue giraffe. There's also this giant telephone that totally looks like you should be able to interact with it, but I suppose it's only there for decoration. Then there's this orange giraffe that has stairs coming out of its ass that you can't climb up. This is amazing. I love the variety. But things quickly take a turn for the worse when you get to the boss of this level. It's a giant carnival head guy. I hate it so much. And he blows bubbles at you. Ugh. Okay, I'll stop there before this entire video just becomes a breakdown of Silent Assault. But I gotta say, play this if you want a really weird and fun NES experience. Again, we find ourselves with another Sachin and Bunch release. Let's talk about Galactic Crusader. It's a vertical shooter that actually seems to make sense. You collect power-ups and they do things you'd expect power-ups to do. And you play as a butterfly or Mothra type thing. One weapon is kind of like that ball spiral weapon from Fester's Quest. I know there's other shooters that have weapons like this too, but for some reason, Fester's Quest is all that comes to mind at the time of this video, so feel free to correct me in the comments. It's actually somewhat tough, but I wouldn't say it's bad at all. Your butterfly creature becomes smaller as you get hit, which is kind of interesting. Sometimes there's really cool looking items you want to get, but that's easier said than done. Like I said, I wouldn't call this a bad game. I just wish a boss would pop up sooner because it starts to feel like the stage just goes on and on. Here's another vertical shooter called Mission Cobra, except this one is more army themed. It's pretty basic, but the enemy ships flip around, which is more than I'd expect. You can power up the double guns, which is always helpful, but what's really helpful is getting the spread power up. Now here's where things go really off the deep end and into the crazy zone. All of a sudden, it gets a little too quiet enemy-wise, and you see this appear on the screen. Warning, speed up. So I expect it to, get a little faster. But no, this goes full on out of control. Look at this. And then if you make it past the speed up stage, you make it to a boss and it basically turns into bullet hell, which I was not expecting. There's a lot going on here. Personally, I don't think it's as good as Galactic Crusader, but it's not a bad game at all. It's just super hard, so go for it if you want a challenge. And now we have Moon Ranger. The story is probably what you'd expect from the title. The Earth is under attack and that's the only man that can save it. Yeah, it's another shooter, but this one's horizontal and it's very slow. And the frame rate is bad. The ship is also very floaty feeling, so between this and that guy's obnoxious face, I have negative feelings about this. You're fighting what appear to be aliens made out of boogers, but they look like they'd be nice aliens. I just wouldn't want to touch them. As for weapons, you get a wave beam, but like Samus getting a wave beam in Metroid. Yeah, I just compared Moon Ranger to Metroid. Welcome to Erin Plays. It's bad, it's generic, there's just not much to say. And lastly, we have Tagin Dragon! I forgot how insanely trippy this title screen was. Between the changing colors of the dragon, the colorful logo, and trippy music, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. The dragon has a scepter and a crown, so he must be very important. The music is giving Touch Fuzzy Get Dizzy vibes, which I suppose fits the title screen. What if the composer of Yoshi's Island was inspired by Tagin Dragon on NES? I know there's no way that's true, but it would be very funny if it was. And we would never know because they would never admit it. Anyway, after playing this again after a long time, I am reminded that I pretty much hate everything about this. I've always thought it looks more like lions than dragons, and you become roadkill when you die. As for gameplay, you can't let the other dragons get your tail, and it's really hard to turn around in time to eat the other dragons' tails. And now that I'm describing it, it's a pretty violent concept. So what is Color Dreams up to now? After releasing a now infamous lineup of NES games, Color Dreams exited the video game industry in the mid-90s to focus on cameras and surveillance tech. I guess they finally found their footing in a field that made more sense. But for retro gaming fans, the quirky legacy of Color Dreams will forever live on. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!